Hello and welcome to Versus, the series where I compare games, see what they do right and wrong, and challenge the general consensus. The early 2000s were an interesting time for 3D platformers. After Super Mario 64 laid down the groundwork for how to make a 3D game, it was time to figure out how to expand upon that with sequels. Both Sonic and Mario did just this, with Sonic Adventure 2 and Super Mario Sunshine respectively. Generally, the consensus of these two games is much more mixed than that of their predecessors on the Dreamcast and Nintendo 64. Super Mario Sunshine is probably one of the most divisive games in the Mario series, and Sonic Adventure 2 has plenty of its own debates as well. So what do I think? Well, you're about to find out. This is Sonic Adventure 2 versus Super Mario Sunshine. Let's establish some common ground first. Sonic Adventure 2 released in 2001, while Super Mario Sunshine released in 2002. This makes the gap between releases even smaller than with Mario 64 and Sonic Adventure, which released about 3 years apart. They also run on similarly powerful hardware for the time, with Sonic Adventure 2 on the Dreamcast and Mario Sunshine on the GameCube. This will be important later. Both of these games are very creative. Super Mario Sunshine has Mario exploring and investigating the lively Isle Delfino, cleaning up graffiti and restoring the shine sprites to the Shine Gate to bring back sunlight to the island. Sonic Adventure 2 sees Sonic evading the military while facing against Dr. Eggman, Shadow, and the Bio-Lizard. These are both equally great ways to expand the universes of their respective franchises. Gameplay in both games is also improved in certain areas. Sonic Adventure 2 streamlines the formula from its predecessor by narrowing down the playstyles to only include the actually fun ones, while also improving said playstyles in a variety of ways. Likewise, Super Mario Sunshine in many ways expands on Mario 64's baseline by expanding Mario's moveset with FLUDD and introducing more challenging platforming than before. With all of that mentioned, it's also important to note that both games also share some negative aspects. The cutscenes are a heavily criticized part of Sonic Adventure 2 these days, but I feel like the same could also be said about Mario Sunshine. To be clear, I don't think either game's cutscenes are as bad as some make them out to be, but they've both aged about as well as Sonic Adventure flavored milk. Another negative point these two games share is that they both had a rushed development. As for how much that shows in the final product, well, let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages now, shall we? I didn't talk about the soundtracks in the last Versus video because Super Mario 64 was running on the Nintendo 64, which had limited cartridge space and could only play sequence music. Sonic Adventure, on the other hand, ran on the Dreamcast, which had dedicated audio hardware and stored its games on GD-ROMs. It wouldn't have really been fair for me to compare them, but what about Super Mario Sunshine and Sonic Adventure 2? Well, now things are a little different. Both of these games run on similarly powerful consoles that can both store and play CD quality audio, so it's a little more fair to compare them here. And with this in mind, I think Sonic Adventure 2 easily takes the crown for the soundtrack with its varied genres, multiple vocal themes, and of course high quality streamed audio. For some reason, despite being a GameCube game, Mario Sunshine still opts for sequenced audio, and while it still sounds good, it simply can't hold a candle to its contemporaries. Another technical difference that these games have is the graphics and performance. While I have both games running in 60 FPS for the sake of footage quality, Mario Sunshine actually runs at 30 FPS on original hardware. Compare this to Adventure 2's 60 FPS, and you could argue that Sunshine feels a bit choppy by comparison. This is of course because of the game's graphics, which to this day are rather stunning for an early GameCube title. The water shimmers, there's heat distortion effects in the distance, and mirrors sport real-time reflections. It seems Nintendo prioritized graphics over performance in this title, and it definitely shows. With the technical stuff out of the way, how about the game design? Well, let's start with Sonic Adventure 2. I talk more in depth about this in my review of the game, which I'll link at the end of this video, but Sonic Adventure 2 expands on pretty much everything great about its predecessor, with tighter controls, more streamlined level design, improved cutscenes, and an even better soundtrack. With this mentioned, I will bring up one caveat. Sonic Adventure 2 does not have adventure fields, the hub worlds from the first game. Meanwhile, Super Mario Sunshine does have a hub world, that being Delfino Plaza, this game's version of Peach's Castle from Mario 64. The way that this hub is designed allows the player to see the other levels in the distance, bringing more cohesion to the game's world, which is pretty neat. However, Super Mario Sunshine has one big problem that brings the whole hub world's design into question. That being, you have to complete the first 7 missions of every level in order to reach the final boss. This means that unlike Super Mario 64, which used its collectathon mission structure to allow players wiggle room to only complete the missions that they actually like, Sunshine forces you to do awful missions such as the secret levels. Granted, Sonic Adventure 2 also forces you to complete all of its levels to finish the game, but Sonic was never a collectathon in the first place, and unlike Mario Sunshine, at least in my eyes, the majority of Sonic Adventure 2's levels are actually fun, and I can't say the same about Sunshine. Also, I mentioned earlier that both of these games had a rushed development. This is true, and to some extent it does show in both titles, but I think Mario Sunshine has it much worse than Sonic here. Mario doesn't feel nearly as tight to control as he did in 64, and at times it feels like FLUDD's hover nozzle is only there to mitigate the frustration that this causes. This doesn't really help with the secret levels though, since the game removes FLUDD from your moveset for these. All of this isn't to say that Super Mario Sunshine is some kind of sin against humanity, but I definitely can see why it's such a divisive installment in the Mario series. So, what's the Versus verdict? I don't know how the comment section will take this, but I've decided to give the trophy to Sonic Adventure 2. While Super Mario Sunshine has plenty of its own merits, I just cannot call it a better sequel, with how it betrays the previous game's mission structure and how the messy controls contribute to that frustration. Meanwhile, Sonic Adventure 2 improves upon nearly everything that made its predecessors so fun, and while I'll admit that the removal of the adventure fields was a bit disappointing, it still doesn't take away from all the good that it did for the Sonic series. If you want more Sonic and Mario, feel free to check out my other videos and subscribe for more video game content just like this. Next week, I'll be showing you the best way to play Sonic Adventure 2, so stay tuned, thanks for watching, and as always, enjoy life.